right. So it's interesting. Being the height of summer, the height of summer is actually rather ungrounding at times. The energy is all up and expanded, and we really are there. So grounding is a good thing to do because, you know, there's a lot of activities, you're running here and there. I don't know about you, but I just don't sleep as much because there's so much more light. You know, as soon as I hear those early morning birds, I'm waking up already. So I just kind of naturally started connecting back to my feet in my practice, to kind of counteract or rebalance. So you don't want to counteract it because it's a nice thing to be expanded and out there, but to balance it. So circling the other way, I'm just loosening up the middle of the body. And let's just come back to feet, shoulder width parallel, and let your arms hang. So on purpose, we're just going to lean into the front of the feet and just let the energy accumulate a little bit in the body. So I'm on the front of my feet, the whole, you know, posterior chain starts to tighten up because it's trying to keep you from falling over. So you're noticing where you develop tightness. I feel a little bit in my hamstring, lower hamstring, a little bit in my low back, maybe the neck, because we're often inclined forward in our work, so the neck gets tight. And then I'm going to gently come back to the middle and then lean into the heels and notice the anterior chain start. Just let the energy accumulate so you're aware of what tightens if you're leaning into your heels. So I feel like, you know, my lower abs, there's a little more tightness on the front. My hip flexors are holding a little bit more. And because I have an anterior tilt to my pelvis, I feel a little more compression in my low back. And my chin is dropped forward because it's trying to keep me from falling backwards. So I come back a little bit forward and a little bit back a couple times, just playing with trying to find the middle. When I come back to just dropping my energy in the middle, this is where I can rest in my bones. And if I can rest in my bones, I can actually elevate through the joint spaces and up through the crown. So in small ways every day, we are standing out of harmony with gravity, which is adding to the sense of tension in the body. So that's the forward and back, and then we do side to side. We all have a bias, you know, due to hand dominance. If you're left-handed, you're often better off because a lot of our tools are right-handed, so you're forced to use your right and your left. And those of us who are right-handed get really right because all the tools, scissors and things are right-handed. A lot of tools are right-handed. So we're not encouraged to use the left with as much detail. So I'm just, you know, shifting. So go to one side and hang out there and just notice what happens. I just went to my non-dominant side and I noticed that it feels weird for me to be over on my left. And I come back to the middle and then I shift over to the right. We're going to do this one more time slowly again, because there's something that happens in the hip capsule as well. This side I'm more familiar with. I feel a little more comfortable being over here because I orient with my right foot forward a lot. I go back to the middle and I go back over to the left side. It feels like it's a left hip capsule stretch for me. And it feels a little weird to be over here. There's a want to go back. So I'm just kind of feeling into that and what muscles moving across the diagonal in my body, because this is kind of a diagonal thing that sort of wake up. And then I go back to the middle and I go back to the other side. And I notice that this hip capsule is a lot looser. Whether it's good or not, mostly it's not. My neck is more familiar. The set of my head is more familiar on this side, just the way I carry it, a little bit more development at the base of my skull, and I come back to the center again. So luckily, over time, when you do this exercise enough, you will find yourself desiring to be in the middle. Because you'll start to notice that it creates tension patterns not to be centered. So I'm back in the middle. Now we're going to go ahead and play with the feet, rolling out. We're going to do supination. So I'm pressing the outside of my foot into the ground, and I immediately notice that my glutes, my gluteus medius, there's a chain of tightness on the outside, because I'm using the outside of my foot. And then I relax the foot into the middle, and then press the inside of the foot in. I notice the inside of my leg gets a little tighter, my groin muscles, a little muscle called pectineus, it's tightening up. And then I go back to relaxing. And then outside, and for me, I'm more of a supinator. So rolling to the outside of my foot is not as hard as rolling to the inside of my foot. And a lot of us who do Tai Chi, because we've got this whole outer roundness, we often exaggerate through the roundness and into the feet and don't let the foot lay flat on the surface of the earth. So this feels more familiar. I drop, and then I roll to my inside. So the moral of this story is that to find the middle again, sometimes you have to go to the opposite extreme of where you hang out. So just dropping the inside or pronating my foot makes me notice the inner line of my legs, which might be a little more turned off because I'm a supinator. And I drop back to the middle. Now I feel like I'm running down the middle of my foot. And I think of this as my second toe, right through the middle of my foot to the center of my heel, or even slightly to the outside of the second toe, running through the middle of my foot to the heel. And I may not have started out that way because I tend to supinate. So going through and this is kind of nice for the ankles, loosen up your ankles, and it's not like any big deal. You could just do this at the grocery store. You push in, you push out. So doing your opposite, if you're a pronator, you really have a lot of pressure. That's less common. Feel a lot of pressure on the inside. You may want to, on purpose, just roll to the outside to give yourself a little relief and balance the muscles. Bring the other side in. And then so you took the whole body, tilt forward, back, side to side, come back to the center, and then play with the ankles. So then the other part of this is, when you're in the center of the foot again, is what is the rest of your body doing? So I like to go to the top of the head, and we've done this before, but I've been doing it again recently because I find it gives me a release that just thinking of lifting my crown doesn't. So you take your thumbs and hook the top of your ears, and you just kind of lift up. So finding the center of my head is to take my middle finger and go in line with the top of my ears, and then let the fingertips come together on the top. The other way to find is I'm going to come a little closer, because I'm actually taking my fingers and putting it at the crown point. And this is a map we need to reorient over and over again, because we start thinking that the crown point's way the back of the head, which tucks the chin, more severely, or we think it's the hairline and we push the chin forward, but really it's the apex of the ears. Follow that line up to the top of your head. Another way to find it is take the heel of your hand and place it at your third eye or just above it, and take your middle finger and drop it. There's that same point. Okay, so it's about the size of the heel of your hand, the frontal bone to your middle finger is about the size of your frontal bone. And it's because it's beyond the hairline. It's like a kid's drawing, how you flatten things out, and anyway, I won't go into that now, but the way we map externally is not the same as what's really happening internally. So I have this bone is pretty big, comes all the way, and then the parietal bones. I put my hands on the sides of my head above my ears. Those are the parietal bones, and where my middle fingers touch. It's where it's the three meeting points of the frontal bone, the two parietal bones, where the fontanelle is. So I am trying to, when I'm lifting my crown, I'm trying to think from there. And an easy way to do it manually is to take the apex of your ears, very top of your ears, and just hook the top and just lift up. And you'll get this kind of wonderful sensation of the whole spine relaxing upwards and releasing upwards. And then when we're doing this in the form, it's to remember where the crown point is, and to lift up from the crown point, not from the hairline and not from the back of the head, but right from the soft spot in the baby's head, right there, lifting up. So if I do that, and after I've done my footwork, if you're feeling really out of balance, sometimes the best thing to do is, if you're feeling off center, is to actually do the footwork and then take your ears and lift up and find the top point of your head and imagine that you're being continually lifted upward. Now I don't have this right now. There's no bias in my body. I'm not going forward, back, side to side. I'm really finding my center. And all of Tai Chi, because it expands away from the center, front to back, top to bottom, side to side, we're always reorienting back to this line. If this line gets really distorted, we don't really ever totally come back. So we have to know what this feels like in order to be able to return. Yeah, got to know what home feels like to return. So that's a good way to start. And we don't spend enough time, because I'm always getting on with choreography, we don't spend enough time centering. But a centering practice could be 15 minutes of your practice, and then move into your form. So once you're centered, then you can go back and say, all right, lower dantian. That's the middle of my body from top to bottom. So again, I'm just working with my map, my felt sense and what my brain thinks, and trying to get them on the same page. So my lower dantian is 3 finger widths below my navel. And, it is kind of a firm spot here, where your transversus comes across. And if you move your fingers down, if you take your fingers and you move them down just above your pubic bone, that's not it. That's not it. If you go up to your belly button, that's not it either. You're above your midpoint. If you go down just 3 finger widths below your navel, there's a little firm spot there. That is your lower dantian. That's the midway point from upper to lower. And if you were, again, balancing yourself on a something like a bar, like in a kid's playground, and you were doing that balance thing, it would go across your hip bones, and right across that point, it wouldn't go across your navel, and not down to your pubic bone. Really finding that spot is another home spot. So just like finding the midline, this is part of that midline, and defining the upper and lower. So we are circling the joints that are closest to the lower dantian. The big movers, the hip joints, the SI joints, which people think don't move. I just heard this horrendous story about a friend of my sister's who ended up in the hospital with horrible sciatica. She was in a rehab for 2 months. And then finally, some smart physical therapist went in who had the ability to adjusted her SI joint, and she started getting better. So if you have a lot of low back pain, get your SI joints checked out. So here I'm putting my thumbs in next to my sacrum, where there's a little bump. So I have that triangular bone, and right on the sides, there's a little bump, and it's a nice feel in there, the ligaments. And when you circle, you're encouraging gentle movement through your SI joints. So you've got your hip, the ball and socket. You have this it's very stable, but a sliding, gliding joint on each side of your sacrum. And then, of course, you have your low back where people experience so many problems. And a lot of those problems are caused by the pelvis not being right. That one half of the pelvis is forward, the other half of the pelvis is back, and it causes extreme restriction through your lower lumbars. That is my experience. So when I circle the center, hip joints, SI joints, and especially that L5, S1, and then on the way up. So we rarely do this exercise, but I'm going to still my hips and I'm going to find the center of my heart. So the xiphoid process and the little notch up here, you want to go halfway from one to the other, and you'll find a little dent in the sternum, and it's kind of tender, and that's conception vessel 17, and it's the pericardial point, the alarm point for the pericardium. So if I try to move this a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm just going to cycle around. Instead of moving my lower body, I'm going to cycle this. So I'm making a circle. It's not as satisfying as the hips because there's not a lot of joints around it to move, but I'm just asking the spine to spiral by doing this. And then if I come to stillness and I roll the shoulders, those shoulders are the biggest joints. Of course, you have all of your, where all of your ribs come in and where all your ribs meet your spine, those are all joints. But then the big movers are the shoulders going out to the arms. So because the shoulders can move so much, they impact the muscles on the chest, which get so tight. And you want to start thinking, again, this is a review of things that we've said in the past, but I only say it once and it's about a zillion times you have to say it. That the sternum, you want to think of this bone as being flexible, and living bone is flexible. You don't want to think of it as being just hard cement. It's not that. It's a living, has blood supply in it, and you want to feel that spot kind of being able to flex open as you do your circling. So we're in heart season, so there's a lot about expanding and opening up through the chest. And then circle the other way. That's middle dantian. Middle dantian is your relationships with others, your relationship with the environment. And then last, so the upper dantian, mapping the upper dantian, where I put the heel of my hand, the third eye. Okay, and it's into the center of the head. So I have to go third eye and over the ear and think of a point right way deep in the middle. And when we do the drop the nose and circle the joints, of course, that are closest, the moving joints, they're all moving joints all in your head because your skull actually does have movement between the sutures. But the base of your skull is going to be your big outside mover and mobilizer. So I'm working the neck in a bigger way by bringing the head forward to the side, ear lifted. So drop the nose, lift the ear, drop the nose, lift the ear. Okay, and then coming back up, scooping the head. So we're chin comes forward, drop the chin down, and then scoop the chin in and up. So I'm bringing the head back, which is a really good stretcher for the suboccipitals, and then lift the nose again. So chin out, down, scoop up, lift the nose. That's all suboccipital, a lot of that. So drop down, scoop up, lift the nose. Out, down, scoop, and lift. Out, down, scoop, and lift. Out, down, scoop, and lift. Okay, so now you're the joints closest to the middle dantian, which is your, of course, mental life. Okay, this is your survival, organic, connected to the earth, the lower dantian. So we're taking care of all of them by taking care of the movers closest to them. So now I'm going to come back and just find the middle of my feet, front to back, side to side. Drop your energy into the earth by opening the center of the foot, and then just let all your, it's almost like water is flowing up through the inside of your body and kind of helping you to lift the joints all the way up to the top of the head, that spot in the very, very top, the crown point. It's called governing vessel 20 in the acupuncture. Okay, so then I'm going to take that and step out. And now I'm taking the earth like I'm roots. But when I get here, I want to reorient, because stepping out, if I just keep my low back in a curl, I'm taking the pelvic bowl and pouring it forward. So I want to just let the low back get long, which is going to cause a little more tone around my lower dantian and therefore awareness there. Let the bones, now you're sitting on an imaginary stool, you're going to let the bones of your spine just float up right to the center of the head to the top, and see what that feels like. So let's do a little supination pronation. This is not easy to do on in this particular circumstance, but if I roll slightly to the outside, if you're a real supinator, you might notice that you're over rolling. And then when I drop to the inside, you may notice that if you're a supinator, you may notice that, oh, I don't really feel my adductors when I do this stance. So roll to the outside, roll to the inside. You're trying to enliven both inside and outside of your legs so that you get to use the whole leg. So I go back to find a new middle. Every time we do the extremes, you find a new middle. You reorient what the center is. And I want to feel like my feet are connected down into the earth. They're not rolling out, and they're not squeezing in. If your knees are like this, you're going to be the insides of your feet. So you see how my knees are falling in. Now the outsides of my feet are up off the ground. So that's not connected either. And I do need to sit my back and round out my hip bones to the point that the foot is connected to the ground. When I over roll, now I've got the same problem. I'm in this big rounded stance, but I've over rounded. It's like the ball is overinflated. Okay, so the invisible ball here that I'm sitting on is now overinflated as I'm on the outside of my feet. I drop, relax my feet. You see, when you drop to the middle, you can relax your feet. You roll in, and now that inflated ball is a little collapsed or pressed inward. Come back to the middle. Less pressure on my feet, more balanced openness. It's like the balloon that's too taut or the balloon that's is too loose. You want it just right. And the feet have a lot to do with that. All right, so now we're going to go to the upper ball, which is more tricky because your hands are floating out in space. You don't have the same feedback from the earth that you do with your feet. So we're going to do the opening through the shoulders, elbows back, wrists back, fingers back. And I didn't just do this because of the earlier request. This is actually what we have been doing the last several classes, is reorienting, trying to find center. And fingertips coming back in. Push the shoulders, elbows, wrists. So I'm stretching that and I'm waking up my back, which is often asleep because the front is so tight. And then relax the shoulders, relax the elbows, relax the wrists, and let the fingertips, as though there's magnets on my fingertips, they're trying to find each other. And there's a little spread out the shoulder and try to feel the magnets, and spread out the shoulder and then try to let the magnets, draw the fingers together. So we have to find a balance between expanded, just like we did with the feet and the legs. This is overly expanded. My back is too tight. My chest is too lifted. There's too much energy. And then let the magnets take over. Now that ball or the balloon is a little collapsed. So I expand and then I come back inward. And I expand. This is doing it with not stretching the arms out, just keeping the integrity of the roundness, just like we did with the feet. So I stretch and I release. Now this time, stretch and try to find the middle. Stretch, release, but don't come into collapse. And when you find this spot, it'll feel buoyant. Because when I collapse, now I'm carrying dead weight above. And when I'm too expanded, I'm carrying too much tension. Collapse is dead weight. And too much tightness, obviously I can get really easily knocked over if I'm too tight. So I expand and I release and I try to find the middle way. Where's the middle where this feels buoyant and not too hard to carry? So this exercise we've been doing of pressing the air and just letting yourself feel the air with your hands as you press forward, and let the backs of your legs stretch. So at the beginning, I'm just letting my arms and my legs stretch. Open my knees, I can open my elbows, and then turn the palms upward. Bend the elbows, bend the knees, and orient your tailbone towards the floor as you use your core to roll your spine up. Reconnect with back of the shoulders and release to the magnet and try to find the middle, and then push down again. So just getting a nice stretch through the back side of the body. Open the knees, open the elbows, feel that stretch. And then palms up, bend the elbows, bend the knees, drop the tailbone, use the core in rolling back up. A little bit of shoulder, a little bit of fingertip. Check in with your feet that you're not overly rolling out. This is great. This is a great exercise to come back to the center. Turn the palms down, press the air. Now your back body's getting a chance to stretch. Scoop, drop the tail. Roll up through the core. Connect the shoulder blades and reach to the fingertips. Check in with your supination, pronation. You can even supinate and pronate to then again find the middle of your feet. Lift the crown as though somebody's picking up your ears, and then turn the palms and go back down. Stretch the low back, the whole spine, the backs of the legs, and then the arms, and then turn the palms up, bend the elbows, bend the knees, as though you're sitting on a stool and using the strength of your core. I'm really feeling my abs more than my back. That's an important thing. I'm using my abs to help lift me. I'm not just using my back, because then I'm going to create another problem. I come and I go shoulder blade, fingertip, inside foot, outside foot. Try to drop into the center, lift through your ears. And one last time, press down. Stretch the back. Then start stretching through the legs. Stretch through your elbows. Turn your palms up. Bend your knees and your elbows. Sit down on the invisible stool. Keep rolling the tailbone down. Feel your abs supporting, lifting your spine. Shoulder blades together. Back to the magnets. Push the inside of the foot, the outside of the foot. Find the apex of your ears and lift up. Okay, and then push down and come back. Just take a little break from that. I think I probably told you guys, a while ago that standing Qigong is a practice. So that this practice people will do for like 45 minutes because it teaches you a lot about how you're holding your body. Because when you hold it, even if you held it for 5 minutes, it would tell you a lot about where you're holding tension. So what we're doing is we're stretching everything, and then we're coming back and we're reconnecting with that centered feeling in the legs, in the arms, lifting through the spine, dropping the tailbone, all of that, because this is the fundamental shape. Shoulder blades together, magnets pulling the fingertips together. You're living in the tension of the opposites. Openness is living in the tension of the opposites. You're living there. So shoulder blades together, reaching through the fingertips. You want to find the balance point between pulling the fingertips apart with the shoulder blades and pulling the shoulder blades apart with the fingertips. I'm relaxing into the middle of my feet, so I just want to supinate and pronate to see what my bias is. It shows up right away as soon as you think, oh, I'm a supinate, pronate. You're like, oh, I've been standing on the outside of my feet. So you pronate to get rid of that tension and then come back to the middle of the foot. Let the tailbone just drop. As soon as I do, I correct my feet. Any tension that was going on around my dantian also drops. I lift the apex of my ears. Let the spine just cascade down from that lift. And then I'm going to turn my hands, stroke the air and push down. Release any tension that you gathered through your hamstrings. Turn the palms up. Bend the knees and bend the elbows. Feel how that opens up your low back. As though somebody's drawing your tailbone down. Feel your core muscles lifting the spine back up. So we'll do this 3 times. Turn and floating down on the air. For a moment, you can just open up the backs of the knees, stretch the hamstrings, stretch the elbows, scoop, turn the palms up, bend the elbows and the knees together. So you start to learn that they work together. Tailbone oriented downward, lifting the core upward. Okay, one more time. We'll just do the stretch one more time, floating down. Stretch, scoop, bend. Digging in as you come up. Shoulder blades together. Fingertips reaching, shoulder blades, fingertips. Inside foot, outside foot. Chin in slightly so the apex of the ears can rise up and the spine can then drop down. So you're always playing with the energy buoyancy rising, the spirit rising, and then the weight of your body draping down. Spirit lifting, weight of the body draping. So when I pick up the apex of my ears and I make the joint spaces in my spine, I can then more easily drop the weight of my spine down again. And then I turn, push my hands down, come back up to standing. So you notice that your knees and your elbows are working together. As my knees open, my elbows open. It opens up my hip joints. I come back to supination, pronation. Reconnect with your feet. Relax the tailbone. A little energy at the dantian. Lift the apex of the ears. Drop the weight of the spine as though there's a rock at the bottom of a string, your sacrum, and you're feeling that lengthening. And then last, just bring your energy back to your lower dantian. Bring your thought energy back to the lower dantian, the center of all things, top to bottom, side to side, front to back, etc. Okay.